First, haplogroups. Mitochondrial haplogroups start with mitochondrial L, approximately 250 to 300,000 years ago, we are told, in male and female Homo sapiens in southeastern Africa, after which the mitochondrial LO types inhabit the south and central lands before suddenly changing at the notch to mitochondrial L1. I will attempt to explain why later. Subgroups mitochondrial L2 went west and L3 appeared where the Nile begins. Then suddenly, about 70,000 years ago, just before mitochondrial L4, 5 and 6 went south again, during what's called the Southern Dispersal event, something also happened to change mitochondrial L3 into two new haplogroups, called mitochondrial M, the pink regions, and mitochondrial N, the yellow, who left Africa and are the founders of all Homo sapien mitochondrial DNA out of Africa. Founder females in Europe were changed to the R group, the green region, with subgroup variations thereafter. Apparently, remnants of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA can remain in some modern people, as they were already populating what would become Europe and Asia. But they didn't apparently have haplogroups. The coloured mitochondrial world map shows the dispersal, as mitochondrial L stayed in Africa, while mitochondrial N travelled over the whole planet except South-Saharan Africa. And mitochondrial N can be seen in North and South American native people and Australian Aboriginals before they were cut off by the melted ice water. Then M1 appears on the Horn of Africa and must have got to Asia well after mitochondrial N had traversed through. We also see mitochondrial M and mitochondrial R way over in South and Central America, but they must have travelled there much later, as mitochondrial N was already there, which fits with the appearances among certain native groups being more Asian or European. So mitochondrial L, N, M and R are the four mitochondrial founder haplogroups shared by everyone on this planet, or so we were told. But no, we find there is actually one more, not included in these mitochondrial lineages and charts, the royal Eve, mitochondrial E/V, that we shall explore in depth soon. Patriarchal Y DNA haplogroups appear to begin with A in the southwest, but I contend they were not the first Homo sapien males, as the first mitochondrial DNA started on the east. The largest concentration of Y haplogroup A is on the west tip, with mitochondrial LOD. So I propose that there would have been a precursor male living with original mitochondrial L and LO on the east, where recently evidence of advanced human predecessor, called Homo nadalis, has been found preserved in caves. See the Rising Star Cave. The area of mitochondrial LO is called the cradle of humankind, and in my opinion is where the first Homo sapien sons and daughters may have been genetically engineered from Homo nadalis. Sumerian tablets speak of alien intervention into humans in that area. Michael Tallinger has demonstrated evidence of advanced knowledge among early South Africans in the area inhabited by mitochondrial LO some 200,000 years before present, where there is an accurate solar calendar and millions of unexplained stone circles, not built by hunter-gatherers to house themselves or animals, as they have no doorways. So what made them change? How did male A change to B and female L to L1? We find two new intruder males came into ancient Africa, R and T, possibly before humans had even left there. T males we see were in Ethiopia with Aborigines who left for Australia 50,000 years before present. R1b was supposedly in Africa 17,000 years before present, Yet R1b are modern white Caucasians in Europe after the Ice Age. There are many mysteries in trying to fathom out how things actually changed. The Dogon tribe in that region hold the belief that their ancestors, the Nomos, fish gods, came in from the water 50,000 years before present, originally from the star system of Sirius. The Dogons have advanced knowledge of Sirius being a dual star system on an elliptical path that wasn't known by us until the 1800s. So it seems that male R and T were both involved in changing male A to B and B to C in Africa, and I contend these two male strains also fathered mitochondrial N and mitochondrial M founder groups out of L3. Male haplogroups A changed to B, who stayed in Africa with mitochondrial L, and then later to C males who ventured out with the new mitochondrial N females. Y haplogroup C and mitochondrial N probably left from the same place and time, as they stayed together across the earth for thousands of years without changing haplogroups, all the way to Australia. At the time when haplogroup C were in Asia, they must have been mixing with Denisovans, who subsequently became extinct some 30,000 years ago, as Australian Aboriginals nowadays can still have up to 4% Denisovan DNA, but no Neanderthal, which is mainly in European. Y haplogroup D clusters appear in the Tibetan region, known to be a Denisovan area. Denisovans gave modern Tibetans a gene for living at high altitudes, but became extinct some 30,000 years ago. D was also concentrated in Japan area, and some say they could have entered there. Japanese mythology speaks of water dragon ancestors. Japanese males are still mostly haplogroup D, with oriental features, and doesn't appear the precursor to modern African males with haplogroup E, who have no Denisovan genes. So it seems that male E's are not mutated from D. Instead, we see that male C leads to two more strains out of Africa, responsible for both versions of modern man, as we see in the previous charts, CF and CT, where CF leads to the FGHI male lineage and CT takes us to KMNO. DNA scientists say there was a big brain event, supposedly 50,000 years ago, with the addition of a whole piece of new DNA known as the FOXP2 gene, which gave subsequent humans new abilities and looks. I contend that this DNA donor appears from nowhere to become the mitochondrial EV females, daughters of two new DNA donors who appeared in northern Africa. It seems that this could be demonstrating how the demigods, fallen angels, mixed with the humans, explaining the royal princess lines of Isis and Ishtar, aka Cleopatra and Sheba, with their Pharaoh and Babylonian sons, and their hybrid human descendants, FGHI, J and K, men of renown, who take over Europe and Asia for the next era. These studies look complex, but they once again show some very interesting similarities to what I've been saying, that T is linked with the early B and C haplogroups, and CF. And here we see the groupings where you have F to J separate to the K's onwards. So K to T is one group, and F to J is another group. Same in this Y haplogroup chart. When They look complex, but working them through alphabetically, we can see where and when things changed. Although, because they're based on mutation rates, they can be very questionable time spans. As I've shown, the C's are Aboriginals. The other continued on from F. This chart from A to I, we see goes through A, B, C, D, E, F, disappears, and we have a big group of G, H, I, J, which will continue on from there later. Mitochondrial chronological trees. As demonstrated in these charts, mitochondrial haplogroups were linked in groups according to their founders, which only changed when some new addition of DNA separated them from the ones before. This occurred when humans left Africa from mitochondrial L3 in fact, to mitochondrial N and M groups. After covering the planet as mitochondrial N, several individuals, namely W, I and X, suddenly appeared before the end of the last ice age. One of the mitochondrial N founders further expanded into a group called the mitochondrial Rs that split into several more subgroups. In coming chapters, I will endeavour to demonstrate why and how these occurred. As we have seen in this chapter, the mitochondrial haplogroup L was in Africa, N was worldwide out of Africa, M was Indo-Asian, and R was European. I contend that these haplogroups correspond to the races, Negroid, Australoid, Mongoloid and Caucasoid races respectively, which appear to have been carried by females to both daughters and sons, along with the new blood groups A and B and Rh negative. When regarded in connection with male haplogroup charts, I contend that these racial differences can only have been instigated by new male interventions with the endemic females, not by mutations. Subsequent hybridizing explains subgroups of each. Mutations are nature's way to accommodate environmental changes which allow for survival. Darwin himself admitted eventually that evolution theory could not explain the change between species, only changes amongst the species.